Roll.
Call to order the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting for June 19th, 2024. First thing on the agenda would be public comment. Mr. Holt, if you would please step up to the plate. Name, address for us.
Yes, sir. Robert Moul, P.O. Box 1131, Third Ward. I think it's, I'll just make a quick note. It's Juneteenth, National Independence Day. And it was a Union general who rode into Galveston, Texas, and advised slaves that had been held in ignorance and not told that they had been freed by the Emancipation Proclamation. And so it's a little bit of Civil War history in a town that likes to note it. But the man who did that, General Gordon Granger, got a tough job and nobody wanted to hear what he had to say. The fact that he had not been good friends with Ulysses Grant at West Point destined him to get a lot of nasty and unfavorable assignments. And so it's in that spirit I come to sometimes talk about things that don't want to be heard. But I want to thank my members of the Third Ward Council representatives for voting your minds, for not being swayed by pressure and bullying and some of the tactics that have gone on recently over this landlord tenant and rental inspection registration ordinance, and that you voted your minds and you did what was right. You weighed the facts and how you felt it worked with your constituencies. And I respect that, even when I disagree with maybe your vote. Because I'm not going to tell you how to vote, I'll tell you my view, but I appreciate that you voted your minds and not what somebody else told you to do. So thank you. And I just want to say a couple of things briefly because it's a long night. First off, there's going to be a presentation about the library. It's on the agenda. I'm going to remind you of the promise that you made last year that we're going to stop the borough being the major financer, underwriter, and the guy who reaches in the deep pockets and comes up with more cash when they fall short in their budget. And so we need to get out of the library business. It's not saying that we're not going to support the library. I'm not saying that we're going to do away with the library. But we're going to get out of being the sole burden of responsibility persons and taxpayers who deal with making sure the library stays solvent from one year to the next. Get us out of the library business and put it in the hands of capable people who are better trained than us. I'm going to say that I am not happy about things I hear about the building at 33 Frederick Street. When that building was bought at a good deal, it was described as turnkey. It would take some paint. It would maybe take some renovations to upgrade the conference room, to make it bigger and to make space for council meetings. But then I see these diagrams, say, on a raised dais and paneled walls, and I'm like, this isn't the Orange County Commissioners. I mean, I don't know. I think you need to look long and hard at installing windows, ripping out walls, realigning offices, all the kinds of stuff. Now, I understand some of that money has got to get dovetailed with the 44 Frederick Street project, and I understand that. But, looking at the financial condition of the borough, we should think about how we're using our resources. And when you let another bond issue for whatever you're going to do over there, we're already looking at a tax increase in this year, and I guess what's happening is we're being guaranteed another big tax increase in 2026. And so, and then one last thought. I see on the agenda there's going to be a block party on the quadrant out there in front of one of the brew pubs. And folks, you may not want to face it, you may not want to talk about it, but you have a drinking problem, and it's pretty much open on the streets. There's a lot of disorderly conduct, a lot of public drunkenness, a lot of DUIs, and this list of 7 pages is just since November of 2023, and when the last time we had this discussion. And I would like you to ensure that people understand that while they have their frolic and their revelry and they have their experience in Hanover, that it's got to stay contained into a certain area, and you can't be wandering down Bear Avenue, up on George Street, up on High Street in a state of drunkenness or alcoholic intoxication. And so I would like to see that they clearly understand what are the parameters of having their little block party. And people cannot be wandering up and down the streets or getting in their cars and driving away, because the consequences are deep, deep. Lastly, and I know I'm taking more time than usual, lastly, I think, and there's been some discussion about it, but I think you really need to look at your planning commission, your zoning hearing board process to make sure the public is really aware of when a project of magnitude is coming to their neighborhood. As in, they should be getting a notice when a project is submitted to the planning commission, not when there's a zoning hearing board hearing, because we know when the zoning hearing board meets, it's a very limited process. It's quasi-judicial, as you know, and there's only a finite set of parameters that they can discuss and consider. And so when people come and say, I'm opposed to it, or people come with a petition that says the community's against it, it's a little too late by the time you get to the zoning hearing board, and there should be a way to inform the public and make sure that they understand when a project is coming to their neighborhood that's going to have a significant impact. And I'm willing to work on that. I'm willing to help with that. I'm willing to dig in, and if it takes legislation, I'm willing to do that. But, you know, it ain't going to happen because one guy says so. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. We appreciate it. Okay.
Tim, according to what Robert has just said, I want to let Bob know that we are discussing planning and zoning tonight. It's on our agenda.
Right.
Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you for your input.
Okay, number 2 on the agenda, executive session.
Council held an executive session tonight from 6:40 to approximately 6:55 involving the following matters: a police employment matter and the potential purchase sale of land in a land swap under sections 708A1 and 3 of the Sunshine Act.
Okay, thank you. Moving to presentations. Library Board of Governors, please. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Do I need to state my name? Or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Christina Rosensteel, Board of Governor, President of Library Board of Governor, President. So the statement I prepared, and I'm happy to furnish this to Dory or whomever would like it, but the Library Board of Governors Subcommittee, in accordance with the verbal direction from Borough Council through Manager Margie Lewis, has committed to the motion of divesting the library operations from the Borough to YCL. There have been several meetings to date between the library, YCL, and Borough's special counsel, manager, and HR director. Provided an agreement can be made conditional on YCL's agreement to terms by the Borough, this is the library's chosen path forward. Monthly meetings with Margie and Amy will continue to be scheduled in an effort to inform and update progress, and ongoing communications with YCL to work through the MOU are also occurring regularly. So I don't know if you need any questions or answers that I can provide, or if you just wanted a statement, but I'm happy to.
Margie, you need anything?
No. Council asked for an update by the end of June.
Right.
I will say that they were probably ready last month. Our council, special counsel, is working with the YCL special counsel and the Board of Governors attorney, And so we're moving forward. They've come up with a plan. We're implementing that plan, and we're meeting monthly. If at any time, the board needs an update, they're willing to come in and update. I am also willing to do that based on what we know, and we will be updating the board. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Christina, may I have a copy of
Yep.
your statement? Thank you.
I'm going to hand this to you on my way out.
Okay, moving to the consent agenda. I'll be looking for a motion for the consent agenda or discussion.
Motion.
Seconded.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to number 5, Finance, Personnel, and Administration. The Civil Plus website, this information was actually in our packet, so that's nice. But the other thing I want to just point out is that take notice that these numbers went down. That's a rare thing. So does anybody have any questions on 5A?
Well, the reason why it went down, can I have the reasoning for
Do
that?
you want to say that? Amy, do you know the answer to that question? Or Dory?
I had the numbers, but I did reach out to them and ask for a reason for the decrease. They did not respond to me yet. I assume it's because this is our second contract, and they consider us a valuable customer, and we don't have any more of the initial setup fees involved.
Yeah, no services are going to go down or anything along those lines. So
Right,
it's kind of a win-win for us.
It was actually a large cut. That's
Yes.
why I'm looking at it, hoping that there was no mistake made.
There's no mistake.
Additionally, our staff person, our social media person, Valerie, is handling a lot of the information on our side of things. So that could also have played a hand in the reduction.
Oh.
So,
Thank you, Margie. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I have a motion on the floor.
motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, the hot button topic item of Iron Mike statue. That was laid out in our packet, pretty self-explanatory, did a good job of cleaning that up. Does anybody have any questions?
Just weird.
Okay. Be looking for a motion for that?
Motion approved.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to number 6, Public Works and Facilities. A is pretty self-explanatory. Anybody, do you want to talk about that at all before we,
If you do not need me to, if you do.
does anybody have any questions about the municipal bid process?
Well, I just have it in the information said 2023. Is that the wrong date?
Yes, so this is for the 2024.
But are the
So-
items the same? Because it's the items and then it says,
So it was 23 items. So we actually had more items to go because it's an electronic auction. They couldn't take all of our items at once this time. So there were a few items that we will slide to an auction in the fall, those being the Christmas decorations that we still have to go and a few more pieces of playground equipment. The auction was very successful again this year. Out of the 23 items we had listed, 17 of them were just small playground pieces that we pulled out as we were doing our refurbishments. So those 17 playground items, 4 pieces of small equipment, and only 2 vehicles, we still managed to tally $59,497 from our auction this year. So very good result. We're very happy with. Those will be certified by Municipbid probably sometime tomorrow, but you'll have the full listing in each item and what it's sold for council next week.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Grimm? Looking for a motion, please?
So motion.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to B, Community Change Grant, if you would like to discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, just very briefly. So, as you know, we're always on the lookout for grant funding to try and advance some of the things and initiatives that this council gets into. And we were actually contacted by EPA about a grant that they have available called the Community Change Grant. And the Community Change Grant offers grants up to $20 million towards certain projects. The key is they're looking for environmental justice areas, and it just so happens that we are an environmental justice community. And so we have an opportunity to potentially use this EPA grant to advance some of the streetscape projects. If you recall, we went through all that effort some time to talk about it, and now we have an opportunity to actually get some funding to work towards it. So the way this grant works is it wants your local government entity to work with nonprofits as partners. And so what we have done is we have had a couple meetings now where we have identified that HEDC would be a partner, Main Street Hanover would be a potential partner, the Chamber would be a partner in this, and then we see perhaps Borough Council and the Stormwater Authority perhaps sharing a role as the primary sponsor of it. So we have the correct mix, the correct blend of people to pursue it. Where we're specifically looking is the area that would start up at their market house, would extend down Chestnut Street, and then would turn left onto Railroad and end at Oak there at the intersection at the signal. That, if you'll recall from your streetscape study, was all part of Dewberry's strategy to bring people into the downtown, potentially better utilize your parking at Market. Let's put Market on the map and connect it to the downtown so that there's a good synergy there. And along the way, we can address things like the current traffic conditions along Chestnut Street. So we have an opportunity to look at that. We have an opportunity to address some of the flooding that we see. Stormwater Authority has already identified green infrastructure as a need that they want to start taking care of. And this grant is really, really heavy on scoring if you're able to do green infrastructure. So at this point in time, we've reached out to Delta, who has historically been really helping us. They've been very, very successful with us in helping us get money. So likely they would be the ones who would author the grant. We will have to engage Dewberry. Dewberry was the engineers who put the streetscape together. We'll need them to bring some of their concepts and renderings and numbers into this, and then let Delta kind of wrap some text around it. They're due in the fall, but there's a lot of work to be done. Because it's an EPA grant, these are not a one-pager. This is a lot of writing, a lot of modeling. It's a lot of things that have to be done. So all I'm asking for tonight really is if you're okay for us to continue looking at this, continuing to engage these different entities, and starting to develop what we believe will be an application for the EPA Community Change Grant.
Is there a matching grant?
No,
It
there is
isn't.
not.
Okay.
But they have said that you will score higher if you bring some money into it. So I think as we look at some of these partners like HEDC and Chamber, maybe we ask for small little bits, compile them together, and create something that we might offer as a voluntary match to help boost our score so that we get a better shot at potentially getting the money that we want.
So you will come back to us then with the amount and more details.
We're still, we just kind of put a box around it and said this is the area we're thinking about. If we want to keep moving, the next step now is to really start to look at what could be done in that area and what might it cost, and then we can start to decide, what might be appropriate.
Sounds great.
Any other questions?
It doesn't have to do, it does, but it doesn't. One extra question, the barrels that are on Chestnut Street in doing what we want to do, how long are those barrels going to be there? I'm getting a lot of...
So the barrels that are there, as we talked about in Public Safety Committee, those are staying while we're working on that study that is coming in through traffic engineers as requested by PennDOT. So what we saw here was the opportunity to tie this grant in with this project. So as council, you have already approved the borough putting $9,000 towards a mid-block crosswalk next year up at the Hanover Market House. This allows us to kind of tie this whole project together and find the money to do what this traffic study basically is going to ask us to do to resolve those issues with the 2 lanes, the parking, and the intersection there at Railroad and Chestnut.
So that will be taken care of.
Yeah, that's what we hope with this grant. Yes.
Okay.
So at this point,
Thank
to a whole other year like that?
It depends. We'll go over that in public safety. We'll see what we come back with from the traffic engineers. The next step on that project would be for council to approve the study. And again, these studies are what help you get these grants. So, we may have to put the money out of pocket for the study, but then that allows us to be able to apply for the grant and then to see us favorably as we have a project that's planned out, so it makes sense to give Hanover this money for the project.
The money that, if we have to not match, but have some money in the till, we would know that after the application goes through, after you start to apply, right? You'll have
know
some
it-
idea?
You'll know it before I submit the application. I would certainly let
Okay.
you know if there was a certain amount of funds that I thought was appropriate, I would let you know that and ask
Yeah,
for approval.
yeah.
from
I'm
that.
just concerned about the money,
Always.
okay? And that
Absolutely.
we only have so
They'll
much
bring that back
funding
to
to
us.
match, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
This is a particular case, given the size of the grant that you're pursuing. Again, I don't perceive that we're going to get 20 million. We've talked to the technical advisor from EPA. We think 10 to 15 is probably where we'll end up, somewhere in there. So if we have to put a little bit forward to get a $15 million windfall, the return on that investment may be worth it. But
Yeah,
I will
just-
bring that back to you. and
yeah,
you
just
know.
let me know that little bit. Okay, all right,
Okay,
thanks,
any other
fellas.
questions? I think they cleared it up pretty well. Good, looking for a motion for B.
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's go to C on Public Works, which is Doss Alley project. Do you gentlemen want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Doss Alley, you'll remember this from quite some time ago. I think we actually started this back in 2021, early 2022. It was moving right along, and then certainly we started doing our building projects and looking at things there, and we started to realize that when we begin to approach the 44 Frederick Street project, we're going to make some changes with parking and some of those things, and so we kind of had to make sure that Doss was fitting in integrally to that. We didn't want to do something on Doss that we ended up turning around and having to tear out and do later. So we got everybody in the same room, kind of got on the same page. We're finally ready now to move forward with the Doss Alley project. And the Doss Alley project is largely the reconstruction of the alley from Frederick back to Exchange. We're going to put permeable pavers in there with some stormwater systems below it that'll have kind of a restrainer curb around it. We will have bollards there that protect the pedestrians, but they can be removed. They actually will go down in the ground or come up and lock. And so ultimately, this entire project is funded through CDBG, so you have the money for this. This isn't an out-of-pocket. We've already met all of our matches and things with this. So at this point, we're working with York County CDBG, but the next step is I need your authorization to put a bid out on the street so that we can get a contractor aligned to come do the work for us.
Any other questions?
Is there a deadline on that money?
I have to spend it by the end of the year because
I
we
thought
are
there was-
2021.
Okay.
It's generally a 3-year window, and we're right up to the end of it, and I really don't want to do an extension, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't get it
Right.
done.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to Planning Commission.
As we touched on a teeny bit, there was conversations about zoning and conversations about, improving some of the processes and the way that the zoning ordinance works. So what Planning Commission has asked is they have asked council to authorize them to begin looking at your zoning ordinance. It's about time. The last time we did it was December of 2022. So we generally kind of look at these on 2-year windows. The timing is absolutely perfect. Given the number of projects that you're starting to see, the higher density projects and things that cause you guys some angst, I think it's worth looking at the zoning ordinance and seeing perhaps what tools can we build for ourselves to help, protect the community, but not paint ourselves in a corner where we're not seeing any kind of growth. How do we get good, responsible, smart growth? And the way you do that is through your zoning ordinance. So right now, the ask of council is simply to allow Planning Commission to engage Gannett Fleming. Gannett has been the architect in previous zoning ordinances, so we'd like to bring them to the table and dump on them all the issues and things we have, sort them out, and see what makes sense.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion before we do that? Okay, we good? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The next item is related to the first one in some way, and we get a lot of requests in a given day from realtors and public in general about, hey, what's my property zoned, and what can I do, and what can't I do? A lot of times it's just a homeowner who maybe wants to put a shed up. They might have a vacant property that they're thinking about doing something, and it certainly takes an amount of staff's time then to kind of drop things, look through the zoning ordinance and say, oh, well, you're actually in this zone and here's what you can do. So what we've done is we've actually built a GIS-based zoning map. And so if you go to the website now, there is actually an interactive map that you can click pulls up a picture of the borough, and it will show you all the parcels around the borough. You can click on the parcel. Each one has the street address on it. You click on it, and it'll pull up a little pop-up window and says, you are zoned as this. If you click on that, it opens up the table and tells you what you can and can't do, what your setbacks are, all of those sorts of things. So it's a tool that allows the public to perhaps get some of that information themselves. We're always happy to help the public with those things, but if I can have them kind of take ownership and find some of these things on their own, that's a good thing. So this isn't really anything I need from you. We did put in the budget to do this year, and it is now complete. It is up on the website. Dory has posted links to it. It's pretty cool. It's a really neat tool. I hope it is not the last the last interactive map that you guys have either. I really would like to see you have some more street maps and stormwater maps and other maps that the public can kind of find some of this information out and see things for themselves.
So we can continue to broaden.
Yes,
the
next year I'd love
technology.
to add more features and things to it. But for now, it's a zoning map and it's pretty neat. So hopefully you'll take a look at that.
Good. So you're not asking for anything from us,
I
thank
do
you.
not need anything.
Moving on to 8, which is Water Resource Department. A.
All right, so the discussion here, so 319 Wilson Avenue. If you're familiar, this is the long, skinny strip that is the land along Wilson Avenue, directly behind Mod Wash, directly behind Raymore and Flanagan's. And what is happening here is the Stormwater Authority engaged a couple months ago on a Growing Greener project. So they went out, much like the borough has in the past, they went to DEP and they were able to secure a Growing Greener grant to try and fix that stream that's down through there. If you've ever walked on that sidewalk and looked right on the opposite side of Wilson Avenue, it's absolutely ravaged down through there. I mean, there's 8-foot vertical banks, there's shopping carts, bags. It's a mess. It's unstable. It's not really healthy as a stream. And so we got a grant based on that. The state said, yes, go ahead, put together a design how to fix that. Now, that's just permitting and design money that we have from them. So realizing that nothing is good unless you can build it, we went out and engaged with the Army Corps of Engineers under a program they have called their Section 510 program. The Section 510 program by Army Corps allocates federal money to actually do the construction. And so we reached out to them and we said, hey, we're thinking about this. Would you come down here and take a look at it? Margie, myself, Public Works, we all went out there, met with them and looked at it. Ironically, it was the day after the ship hit the bridge in Baltimore. So they kept their commitment. They came up here. They met with us anyway. And we took a look at it. And they do believe it's a good candidate for their program. And so what they are doing now is they are working on a scoping document that ultimately will lead towards hopefully an engagement with them to do this work. Now, why we're here tonight, why we're talking about tonight is we don't own that skinny strip of land that's right beside Wilson Avenue. We own all the land behind it, but we don't own that skinny strip. That's owned by Mr. Monahan, and he's actually here in the audience tonight to answer some of your questions if you have them. But what is being proposed here is simply he has offered that he would engage in us with a land swap. And what we would do is we would, as a borough, take a small portion of land that we would then take ownership of, and in exchange for that, we would give him an equal-sized small piece that would help him further develop the piece of property that he's looking at. Because his is sort of skinny, and so it makes it really hard to develop a piece of property if it's not particularly deep, because you have parking requirements and setbacks and things like that. And so the ask tonight of council is simply to allow staff to begin to move forward and really, we have to do an appraisal. We're going to have to, Mr. Monahan will engage a surveyor to begin a survey, but obviously none of us want to do those things until we're sure that council's comfortable with this. So,
Does anybody have any other questions?
Mr. Monahan, give
The
a
only
quick...
question that I have, how many units would be involved in the Marriott?
So if I could, thank you for allowing me to be here. And just a little 2-minute commentary. I've been in this council chambers many times, and before the term public-private venture or partnership became a popular term, I worked with the then borough council and borough manager, Ron
Orndorff.
not Ron Orndorff, but
Rebert.
Bruce Rebert. So Bruce and I and the Borough Council worked very hard. There was a bond issue put forward. I owned a large amount of land, 288 acres in the borough. And so I put 1.5 miles of 4-lane highway and infrastructure. I put George Street in, Wilson Avenue in, and I committed to repay the bond 100% of all that done was paid for by me. I repaid the bond issue 5 years ahead of schedule. And along the way, there were things that the borough needed, there were things that I needed, and we worked hand in hand. And for example, one day, a billboard company approached me and said, we'd like to put billboards on Eisenhower Drive. And I said, well, let me talk to my friends at the borough. So I spoke to Bruce and a couple council members, and they said, we know you can do it because you have the right to, but we don't think it'd be appropriate. So I didn't do it. Along the way, and I refer back to this property right here, Bruce was talking to me. He said, you know, you have all that land behind, and all that water's going to run through there. He said, why don't you take that land you have and just donate it to the borough? So the land we're talking about was land that I owned that I donated to the borough. And so we're looking to try to do a land swap because we'd like to put a Marriott hotel there. We've already filed the application, and I own the Hampton Inn, I own the Holiday Inn Express, and we thought it'd be a good mix there, new jobs, more tax base. And so I've been in contact with Eric and to discuss the benefit to the borough with the stream and the restoration there, and then the piece of land we own. And I think what we're looking at is less land swap that I need than the borough needs. So hopefully you will consider our partnership over the years and look favorably to a benefit to both sides. And I'll answer any questions you have.
Well, the units, how many units do you propose?
I think it's 78.
78
rooms.
units?
Yeah.
It's comparable to the other ones.
Yeah. And it all fits there on property.
How many does the Hampton Inn have? Do you recall?
Hampton has, I think the Hampton has 88 units, and the Holiday Inn Express is 62 or 64.
How many levels to the Marriott?
I think it's 3.
3. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? I'll be looking for a motion, please.
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Second. Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, B, lead service program.
The last item is, again, not something that necessarily I need action on, but something I certainly might need your help with. So we have a mandate in the borough as a water supplier that by October 16th of this year, we are to hand into DEP a lead service inventory. And what that means is we have to show them what all of our water services are made of in the borough. And when we look at those water services, we look at two sides. We look at the borough side, we look at the customer side. The borough has been very busy for the last year and a half tackling this. We have built GIS tools, field collection tools, dashboards, all sorts of things to help us. We have been interviewing past water staff. We have been doing test pits. We have been doing water tests, all sorts of things. The borough is now done with our side. We have our side mapped. We have taken the last little bits of lead that we had. There was about a dozen connections. We've removed them. We've replaced them. But now our attention turns to the customer side. And the customer side is a little bit more difficult for us because on our side it's a little bit easier because we have a lot of historical records and things putting them in. As houses are built and things, sometimes it's harder to get those records. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the public to help us. And the way a lot of municipal authorities around the state that are tackling the same thing do is that we have built a very simple little online survey. It can be done on your phone. It can be done on a PC. It's really, really simple. And it asks you a couple questions about your service. And ultimately, there's a couple tests that you can do to help tell us whether or not you may have a lead service line. Once that information comes back, you don't have to do anything else as a customer. Then I will have a dashboard. I'll be able to see all of that. I can extract what I need from it. And hopefully, if we get everyone's participation in it, then we can hand in our homework to DEP and be done with the effort. So the dashboard and the survey and all of that is up. It's live. It is actually already on our website. The issue that we're having is, you know, Dory and Val are kind of blasting it out there on our social medias and the banners and things like the website. We're not getting the public's input on it. I think as I came to the meeting tonight, there 5 people have taken the survey. I have 18,000 customers. I need more than 5. So what I'm pleading with council is as you go back to your wards, as you talk to your constituents, point them in the direction of the borough. I've reached out to Conewago and Penn and McSherrystown and said very similar, like, hey, I need you guys to get out to your people, you know, at your meetings, on your websites. Same link, you know, let's get those other communities engaged. but I'm looking for some assistance from you guys. So it's not an action that I need from you tonight, but as you're talking to your constituents, as much as you can help me with that, I'd love to see that number tick up.
When we're talking to our constituents, the first thing they're going to ask is if you had 3 samples there on how to test for lead.
Yes.
It's a little hard to see. Could that be enlarged for?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
So you might want to put that down to enlarge that. I found it quite interesting. The first thing they're going to ask me is if we discover we have lead pipes, what is going to be expected of us monetarily? And I'm going to have to answer them.
That's a great question. So I think the first thing is if someone believes that they have lead, the very first thing I'll do is notify us directly. That way we can send a water staff member out and they can actually check to be sure indeed that that is what they're looking at.
Okay.
So what happens in this world is ultimately it is the customer's responsibility for the service line from the curb stop into their property. But if we can get attendance, if we can get a bunch of people to say, hey, here's what I've got for my water service, we have the ability to go after federal funds, state funds. There's all kinds of sources of money that have been made available. The bipartisan infrastructure deal has money in it for lead replacements. We can go out and get money to help those customers to make those changes. But the thing that we really want to stress is we need to get an understanding of where they're at first, and then we can work on the strategy of how to help them get that taken out, and hopefully be able to do so at the least amount of cost possible.
Okay, because you showed the piping coming down and where you could ascertain, what you have there.
Yes.
And you said since 1986 was when anything...
there's a higher chance. If you're pre-1986, there's a higher chance.
It's suspected that they would have lead. So, and then I started thinking when I was reading this that all of Ward 5 and Ward 1, anything that's within the historical area, pretty well
be our older,
can expect to see that. Yeah. I mean,
and
not
the
that
borough, the borough made some pretty proactive efforts years and years ago to actually do a lot of lead removal. So we've been pleased so far with a lot of what we've seen. There was a very strong effort to try and get lead out of our system, but we certainly expect that, there probably will be some lead service lines that we're going to need to address. The thing is, I know someone might look at that and say, well, geez, if I don't take the survey, then you don't know that I have lead, and then I don't have to replace it. The problem with that is, what's going to happen is if you don't respond to the survey, we're going to have to hand our homework into DEP, and it's going to say unknown. And what DEP is going to say is if you mark unknown on there, we as a borough are going to have to also then say, what is the strategy to turn that from unknown into known, which means we're going to have to set up house visits, we're going to have to come out, we're going to find it one way or the other. It's much, much better to be proactive. Let's get in this in a big group, and then that makes us much, much more attractive for grant funding. We could use CDBG funding. There's all sorts of funding sources that we can use for this. But it starts with understanding where it's at.
Right, and I think that would help also if people are thinking about selling their homes, that it affords them a better opportunity to take care of the problem before they sell it, because I've got a feeling that if we're really getting into pure water, no leaded water, that could have it could prove to be a disability to someone who wants to sell their home and they don't have the,
Most certainly.
it could come up,
So again, just a plead, push it. Push it with your constituents if you can. Dory and Val and I and Tom will continue to push it from the borough side. We will continue to push it to our outside community partners, but I could use your help.
Is that the homeowner's responsibility or the tenant's? Or does it matter?
The owner of the property would be responsible for the replacements. The renters wouldn't be able to make physical changes to the property like that.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maines.
If the property turned out to be tested for positive for lead, is there a timeline that the homeowner has to get that repaired by? If they don't, will they get fined?
Obviously sooner than later, because if you do indeed have a lead pipe and you're ingesting lead, then we kind of want to stop that sooner rather than later. I think each case we would look at it and try to determine how severe it was, how much, is it just maybe galvanized and not fully a lead pipe? There's some different nuances and things there. But I don't have a set time. It's not that as soon as we find lead, you've got 30 days to get it replaced. It's not like that.
Gotcha.
Sooner than later, but certainly, again, we would love to go out and try to get some funding and bring that to bear on something.
It's nothing they would get fined for until a year.
Was there anything in the last newsletter about that? I don't recall.
No, we missed the last deadline, I think, or did we? Actually, Tom wrote an article, but I don't know if that was for the newsletter or that was for the website. But
Either way, it'll be repeated in the next one. If it was
Yeah.
in, it'll be
Then we get the
repeated.
next one.
Yep, absolutely.
But I think, I've heard many people say they really read it now. It's more than just the garbage rates or garbage pickup. So thank you.
Eric, you were replacing piping during the time that Columbia Gas and everything, where they were ripping up at that time, was the lead pipes that the borough was involved in. They were replaced at that
If
time,
we found
weren't they?
lead during that, I can tell you it would have been replaced.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
We
you.
would not have seen it and left it. We would
Okay,
have
thank
worked
you.
to replace it.
Thank you, sir.
That is all for me.
Okay, moving on to number 9. Does anyone have anything for number 9?
I do. I need to make a statement, please.
Yep.
Before I read my statement about the rental registration and inspection ordinance, I want to clarify that I am not against registration and I'm not necessarily against inspections. We do not know the current number of rental units in the borough or how many of them are problematic. Therefore, our existing registration ordinance needs to be made aware to the public and be enforced first, and data collected through our code enforcement department to determine the percentage of problematic rental units to substantiate the need for an inspection program before creating more bureaucracy for all landlords and tenants. I spoke with Magisterial District Judge Michael Gessner about this ordinance, as he would be the judge to settle any legal disputes, and he would, and I quote, have glaring legal questions. He believes it is a bad idea to put an ordinance in place, then build the policy after it has been enacted. Also, a rental unit is legally considered a private dwelling, not a business, and he questions if it is legal to enter without a valid legal reason or without a report of something wrong. He also added that he sees cases constantly of people struggling to pay their rent, and they are not behind by a month or two, but behind by thousands of dollars. On May 14th, I attended a meeting held by State Representative Kate Klunk with Manager Lewis and Code Officer Chris Miller. Representative Klunk, who has a law degree from Dickinson and writes legislation in Harrisburg, thought the ordinance was poorly written. She also expressed several of her concerns as both a legislator and a resident, and conveyed many constituents, landlords, renters, and residents alike, had reached out to her office to voice their opposition to this ordinance. I do not make this decision lightly, and since the last council meeting, I have done my due diligence to confidently make a wise decision. And with that said, I would like to read my official statement. To the honorable members of the Hanover Borough Council, pursuant to Section 3301.3 A2II of the Pennsylvania Code, Borough Code, I am returning without my approval of proposed ordinance number 2369, also known as the Residential Rental Units Registrations and Inspections Ordinance, as passed by Council on May 22nd, 2024. This ordinance would mandate inspections of all residential rental units located within the borough limits, along with mandatory rental permits to operate the rental units. This proposed ordinance has not been vetted thoroughly. It is too ambiguous and open-ended as currently drafted, which gives it the potential to become overburdensome and onerous. The ordinance needs to be quantified and data-driven, and the solution specified and properly articulated, as most concerns and questions of those who attended the meetings were unanswered. Furthermore, it did not include a schedule of registration, inspection, or reinspection fees as the fees were not developed and disclosed to taxpayers before the ordinance was voted on. It is irresponsible governance to move forward with this ordinance without knowing how many rental units will need to be inspected, the cost to inspect these properties, or the logistics of implementing this ordinance. Additionally, the unknown cost of implementation could lead to a tax increase imposed on the borough citizens. I believe that enacting this ordinance would cause an undue financial hardship for the lower income families of our community and could lead to increased homelessness within the borough. My recommendation is that the Hanover Borough Ordinance Number 1796 be updated and enforced, along with community education on the various ways to report any issues regarding rental units to the Code Enforcement Department. For the reasons above, I must withhold my signature and veto Ordinance Number 2369.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
You surely may.
Okay, so as it is her right, the mayor has returned the ordinance 2369. Her return needs to be reflected in the minutes, so I would suggest that that the actual letter dated June 17, 2024 from the mayor be appended to the minutes for approval at the next workshop meeting. Also, under the code, if the mayor does not approve an ordinance, council shall reconsider the ordinance at its next meeting. It could be tonight, but it's not on the agenda. So at its next meeting, so it's likely to be on the agenda for council's June 24 Borough Council meeting.
June 26th.
6, okay. For a reconsideration. And that will take a roll call vote, and it must pass by a majority plus one in order to override the veto.
And the majority is what number?
6 plus 1.
Plus 1.
So we need 7.
So
What?
7.
7.
Huh?
7.
Yeah, I can add.
Yeah.
I got that down, yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to know.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other reports of council members or anything under number 9? All right. Anything from the management report? Okay. Correspondence was in our packets. Let's move to open the floor to additional public comment. You want to ask online if anybody has?
Yep. Those joining us via Zoom can unmute yourself if you'd like to address council.
Okay. And then we'll move on to the famous number 13, please. Adjournment. Motion.
Motion.
Second. Approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.